Well, good morning.
Good morning.
As you know, my name is John Heineman, and Don Braithwaite, as part of her putting together this convention, really wanted us to look at the 5 years out. We are 95 years into this association, and we are 5 years from, I'm sure, a grand celebration of 100 years. And the question is, where will we be in 5 years? And so to begin with, I'd like everyone to go around and introduce themselves. Again, I'm John Heineman from Lincoln High in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Diane Ritstar, Arapahoe High School, Littleton, Colorado.
Mary Bozick, University of Northern Iowa.
Christine Bruckner, Illinois State.
Lindsay Solomon, Illinois State.
Ruth Kay, Detroit Country Day School.
Arlie Daniel, East Central University, Oklahoma.
Melissa Beal, University of Northern Iowa, formerly Lincoln Southeast High School, Nebraska.
Dave Wang, Keokuk High School in Iowa.
G.Dan Strife, Oakland Catholic High School in Pittsburgh.
Virginia Myers from Wylie Baptist University and Texas Tech University in Lower Texas.
Bob Stockton from Catella High School in Anaheim.
Valerie Goff Whitecap, University of Pittsburgh, Carleton University, formerly Fort Couch Middle School.
Nan Johnson, Corsicus, Minnesota State University, Mankato.
I thought a great place for us to start. I think we have several. I know Melissa, Bob, are you on the plate?
Yes.
Yes. So I thought it would be good to, where we started and then kind of quickly review where we've been and then focus on where we're going. How does that sound?
Good.
3 main points.
No.
I could have brought a visual aid of the plate.
We could have. Oh, that's true.
Okay.
The plate has resurrected. So.
Yeah.
Let's hear the story of the plate.
Yeah.
The story of the plate. There was no interest group for K-12, elementary, secondary. In fact, the first convention that I went to, people looked at my name tag and said, "High school? What are you doing here?" And I thought, makes me mad. It's a challenge. So we got some support from the national office, and we were going to have a group that was going to meet and create some programs for elementary, secondary teachers. We met at the Curtis Hotel in Minneapolis. I think it was 1975. And what started out as a fully funded group from NCA. NCA was going to pay our travel, pay our lodging, pay for the meetings, etc. Ended up, we didn't get any funding, so we decided to go ahead anyway. There were 5 of us who met, and we, of course, had no refreshments ordered or anything like that. So we wanted, in the middle of this, we wanted refreshments, of course. So I went and talked to the people at the hotel and said, we'd like a plate of cookies and some coffee. The plate of cookies cost us $30, so we presumed that the plate went with it. So we got our cookies and we got the plate, and then we decided that the plate was going to be passed on because that was really where the K-12 section started. It was going to be a lot broader than that and lots of things going on, but there was no money. So it was Roger Matten from Michigan, Bob Heimerl from Minnesota. Who was the other woman Tom Kay from Wisconsin. Me and
Sandy Gray and
no, Cindy came after that.
Okay.
I can't think of her name right now. Senior moment. And from Minnesota. And so we met for 3 days and just decided how we were going to go about getting an elementary secondary section started. So we pushed really hard. I became, for some reason, I don't know how that happened, I became a spokesperson for the group to try to push this through. And so we got SCA at the time to establish a K-12 group, and we've been going strong ever since, and been rogues ever since because we needed to be. And then that plate then, after we got the group started, then it became the plate that got passed along to each officer.
Well, your signatures are on the plate.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Yeah, we did that in permanent marker back in 75. I think we had to kind of go in and fill it in a bit over the years, but it was, $30 for a plate of cookies. There were 12 cookies on it. Goodness.
They must have been huge cookies.
No, as a matter of fact, they were like so. My mother was along, and she never would condone stealing. Right? She said, "I believe you're right."
And it's not a beautiful plate.
It's an ugly plate. It's got a steer on it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I'm thrilled to be able to take the plate back once again. Well, I think it's also important that we talk about what do you think has been the significant contributions of the elementary and secondary section throughout the last really 20, almost 30 years?
I think one of them is the standards, writing the K-12 standards, and then moving on to the liaison with the College Board, where the language arts standards now have reading, writing, speaking, listening, and media literacy, and that we have, as an organization, adopted them. I think that has set a precedent for what needs to go on across the country in terms of curriculum, and at least we have a basis.
And I think despite the fact that sometimes we're small in number at this conference, that sort of the work that we do certainly gets out to a lot more people than just this group. There are a lot more people who utilize those standards. There are a lot more people who utilize the College Board things. There's a lot more people who utilize the activity books that all of you worked on. And those just transcend just this little group. And so I think the contribution has to be looked at not just from this group, but the outreach that the group has. These are necessary things that other people who aren't here need.
And I use the books and the standards in my methods class. So my students go out knowing what they are and being able to use them.
Yeah, I want to follow up on Arlie, because I think that's one thing that often is ignored, is our contribution to the discipline in terms of how many people here had a high school speech class, and that's what made them interested. That's why they're here as professionals.
Correct.
And I think that's a major contribution.
I think the spread of those standards is really an influence. And I know when we were writing the text for the English language arts standards in Texas, I called NCA and said, "Can you send us an appropriate number of books and whatever?" And they did that, and we incorporated those 6 strands into the English classes in the state, and it's been interesting to see that develop and the change it has made in the teaching of English in Texas, and that's K-12. So.
Sherry Morelli gets a lot of credit for the dissemination part of it, answering questions and all these requests for materials.
Yes.
She's just been, as in that role, just a tremendous supporter in getting that information out.
That's right.
And I think one of the other things, too, is once that got then picked up by College Board, and you and John were asked to work with College Board on
But
that.
a lot of people backed us up and read things.
Exactly.
It was great.
And so that just extended our reach a little bit, but we don't even know how much that's affected other people, because in our state, I've passed those the standards and the College Board things on to a lot of programs that have said, well, we're in trouble. They want to cut us. They want to cut speech. They want to do this. And you show them that, okay, now College Board has recognized this. We have these standards. This is what your district should be looking for. And I think that's helped people all along. And that's something that you can't quantify that impact, because it's not ordering books from NCA, but it's getting things from people who are connected. And I think that outreach, the spider web of the outreach.
And I was speaking to Brad in the office last night at the reception, and he says that link is still very hot between NCA and the College Board. They're linked both ways, and that is very active all the time, because I think people really need, as they justify programs or building programs or revamping like we do every 7 years in our district, those standards from the very beginning have been very important.
Just for clarification, let's say the name of them. They're the College Board Standards for College Success. They're designed to tell high schools what their students need in order to be successful in college.
And it really does, and it's on 6 different levels, and they're just levels. They're not grades, because that's part of it. But it really extends down into this beginning and elementary, middle school, and then as the person graduates to go on to college.
I think the other thing, I mean, just moving away from that just a little bit, if you notice, and this was pretty clear in a program that we did earlier in the convention, is that our programs are not just attended by elementary and secondary people. You have an outreach to the basic course type people, the community college type people, and it's a service that we can provide based on the teaching of our standards and our discipline and things. And it's something that everyone is drawing from, not just the K-12 teachers.
We may not get all of the publicity for all of the in-depth research over a long period of time. We're pedagogy-based. We're on the ground floor feeding into those programs, if you will. And I think that my personal opinion is we're the most important people here, and they stand on us. We're the little ball, and the circus stands on top of us.
This is the base for which it all starts.
Yes.
And that's why we started with the K and went on through college.
Right.
And I think that's one of the important functions of this group, is that we do show that K college as opposed to K-6 or K whatever, or high school or college.
Another thing, too, I think we have become disciples or preachers, if you will, to programs that are going away. In states that have them, that no longer have them, mine doesn't have them anymore. And where the certification has changed, we've been able to say, using these models, look what still is out there, look what other groups are using. This is where they came from. So we've done ourselves a good service as far as that goes. And we also can say to states that don't have programs, or districts that don't have programs, look at what your basis can be. So it's multitude of levels, I think.
I think establishing the group as an interest group and pushing and having convention sessions throughout all these years has made the discipline and the organization in other areas give us some credibility as well as give them some credibility. Until I became chair of the Education and Policies Board, there had not been a K-12 person who had been chair. And we started a lot of the initiatives during that time because it was, I knew what was needed as a K-12 teacher. I think that made a big difference. And so now there are people who, and a lot of you have all served on that, but we hadn't had anybody who was there longer than a year, and I was chair for 3 years. So that, I think that opened up some eyes too, that we had some influence. And then we were bringing the discipline their majors.
One other unique thing about us is that we cross over theater and performance studies and rhetoric and media. I mean, we really are the most eclectic, I think, perhaps, in terms of where our disciplinary roots are. And I think that's a real healthy thing that we bring, the synthesis kind of all of that is important.
We're the generalists.
Exactly.
Good point.
And when we move to the college level, we're still the generals.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Well, that's a good point, though.
No.
That's a good point because who is better qualified to teach that basic course in college than a high school teacher? Because you've got that knowledge and the pedagogy to put together. They're perfect as adjuncts or when they retire to do part-time or whatever. They're probably the most qualified basic course instructors you could find.
I was in a program yesterday, as I was, of past presidents in the 5 years out, and a question from the floor kind of startled me, and then I wanted to say, yes, do we still talk about teaching? And I think it's because so many of us who have moved to the university level, cut our teeth and served for a long time in the public schools, that we know about teaching, and that's the most important part of our discipline. Regardless, where are our research people and our theorists and whatever, if they haven't had good communication teachers? And I don't know how you felt about that question, but
I wanted them to say, teaching is it. That's what we're here for.
they didn't say that.
And without that, we're nothing.
Yeah.
But none of them said that.
No, they didn't.
I was just at the gifts program, and this person was doing a project for teaching Burke in his political communication and rhetorical theory class. But he got the idea out of a book published for elementary and high school teachers, and he adapted it to the university level. So we have so many impacts on what is done in the university when it is pedagogy. And a gifts program is people who are trying to teach effectively. And I think that was very interesting that we're talking Burke, but it's purely from what you could do in middle school.
Well, I think yesterday, and in some ways, yesterday's panel, which was on delivering an effective speech, teaching those skills. And I was like, oh, it's early in the morning. Is anyone going to show up? It's just going to be us. And it was full. I mean, it was a dozen people and a lot of, first-time TAs that were going, help. And it is that kind of fun. And really, a lot of our panels are short courses. I mean, they really are that kind of practical work. And I think that's really been a great service, especially for those teaching the basic courses. We're so connected. And often, our connection with community college is very strong. And I think those connections have played a key role in our livelihood over the years.
I think one of the, adding to the eclectic nature of our group, we cross almost every level. You've got K-12, you've got community college, you've got graduate students, you've got four-year college, you've got all the university, the teacher education people. You can just go right up the levels. And we're one of the only sections that probably encompasses all those levels for one purpose. And I can't think of any other area in the association that does that.
One of the other things we should mention, I think, is the role that the speech communication teacher originally played and how supportive that was of high school teachers. In the original, Judd Newcomb, I think, was the first editor of that. Even though he was a college person, he had high school roots and had written a high school textbook. He made sure that there was a nice balance with high school. If you go back to those original issues, there were a lot of high school teachers contributing, and that became a little bit less and less, although it's still maintained until fairly recently. I haven't really looked too recently, but
part of the name change.
Yeah.
From speech teacher,
right,
speech communication, just communication.
Teacher, right, exactly. But I think that was an outlet for publication for high school teachers, and also a great result, and it resulted in the kind of thing Jean just talked about, where a college teacher might find this article for high school and think, hey, I could use that in my basic course or whatever. So I think that was a really important pedagogical publication that really made a difference.
Although the resistance from, at that time, I think SCA or NCA, was flabbergasting to me. And I sat in LA, or legislative council at that time, and was told that could not be my journal. I mean, that was the argument. Could I pick this, please, as my journal and not have to pick a journal that is wonderful to read, but not helping me directly? And it finally did. They finally came around in that. And that word, if nothing else, we're persistent. We've got tenacity. And they know that. They know we never go away. That we will be back the next year.
We are what we teach.
We are what we teach, yes. But that's also been, I think, part of the interesting history is that we have really been in some big struggles to justify who we are, to get our needs met as communication professionals. And I think part of that, has made us great friends. I mean, this is my NCA, this is why I come, is to be here. But I think those kinds of, over the history of, and every once in a while you think all those probable battles have been won, but there's new leadership and there's new, focus and vision, and all of a sudden we're battling some of those, oh really, we have a K-12 section? All of a sudden.
How many other sections have had to fight and justify for their existence? Not many.
That's also been a frustration as I've gone to panels that aren't ours, that are doing K-12 research, going, why aren't you a member of the K-12 section? You're doing the research, come. And when our numbers were low at one time, that was a real issue because it based on, at the time, how many numbers you had, depending on the slots and those kinds of things. So
I wanted to add one more thing on the speech communication teacher that was very good. At that time, I convinced the state association that we should have it because we had a lot of K-12 members at that time, and it was a membership bonus, and we got them and we just distributed them. And of course, now we're losing our K-12 people. They're not coming to our state convention anymore, so we've kind of just quit those kinds of things. But it was a good bonus, and it was one of the reasons I think we kept the K-12 teachers for a while.
And we copied you and did that in Nebraska when it was an easy, thing to.
We did it in California also.
It was.
Yeah.
When you think of, I'm sorry to use the word arrogance, to say that the high school teacher members can't count as their publication the one that would be most relevant to them. It's just like you said, it's just flabbergasting, really. I don't know when that switched. It's been several years.
It hasn't been that long, hasn't it?
Has it been with Taylor and Francis? Did it come?
It was before Taylor.
It's been a while. But I just wondered who was the person we should give credit to for that, and I don't know who that was.
John Heinemann.
No. I'm going to be Taylor Heinemann. Blame it one of the other.
Where does the editor from that come from? Because in legislative assembly, we never hear a report from that.
That goes to the pub board. And
It's they're appointed.
Okay.
And then we approve it typically, but by then it's, here's this person's resume, and here is how fabulous they are, please approve.
But they don't stand up and talk about
No,
what
typically
they've
not.
done.
And often that's done online. I mean, they email you and say, do you approve?
And there used to be a newsletter. I was cleaning out boxes last week and
No,
found
I
a
have this feeling that I was the last newsletter. just doesn't get quite done all the time.
We did have a newsletter.
We did have a newsletter.
Everybody kind of did. And then email was supposed to.
We were going to do an email of it, and then it just...
I liked it because I could pass it out to teachers in my district when there was something salient about teaching oral communication through a social studies. I could give that person that newsletter, and that was helpful to me.
Maybe that's one of the things we need to think about, is some kind of publication, or not necessarily publication, but just even online posting of some of our convention papers and things like that. When we do a program, make it in a publication form so that we could just post it online. I think I'm getting into your next section. So
There you go. That's great.
But didn't we used to have at the meeting, the section meeting, we all sign up with our emails. Does anyone ever use that list?
Well, I used it when I was
Yes,
secretary.
That's right.
Yeah.
You did a lot. We could use that as a resource. Somebody could ask a question and get all these great answers. Like for a methods class, I'm just thinking maybe we should think about that.
I think
that's true too.
Well, the email you got you should have got an email that said you're all the
Yes.
programs.
Yes.
That is the K-12
That's
list.
the list.
So you can,
anybody could use it.
if you haven't erased it, you can save that and say, here.
Yeah, I think we could make better use of that.
Well, I think we are at an interesting point that are we done with the past?
And present.
I did want to clarify one thing. The first editor was Sharon Ratliff, but it was because we were in an experimental stage. Once it went through that, because I was Ed Policy's chair when we put it together, and so Sharon did the first one.
Okay, and
Then
then
Judge
it was
became
and then me.
Yeah,
That's why
Judge
I
became the
gotcha.
permanent one. Yes,
Right.
it was just a one year or 1.5 year or something
Sorry.
too. Yeah.
So where are we now? In 2000?
What year?
We remember that celebration. Yeah, that's right. We made it to the new millennium. So what are our strengths and challenges today before we think about 5 years from now?
I think a lot of the challenges come from external sources. They come from the states who are trying to cut. They come from districts who are no longer see the value and just as an expense of extracurricular programs. Theater gets cut, debate, individual events, and the speech classes. Oh, we'll integrate those with English and save money.
They come from No Child Left Behind, because
Thank
of the
you.
emphasis on reading and writing and the the inability to see that speaking improves both of those.
Because if it's
English
not on the
communication.
test,
Right.
You can't teach it.
it's not emphasized in the
important.
classroom.
That's right.
And we have to teach the test because we have to have good schools.
Oh,
I
yeah.
took a group of ISU undergrads to Chicago Public Schools yesterday, and they taught, and then they got to speak with all of the teachers. And one of the questions they asked was, how are you incorporating communication into your English classes? And there were 4 teachers, and they all just kind of sat there. And then one finally said, we don't.
Yeah.
And that was it. And my students looked at them like, oh my goodness. And then one came up to me afterwards saying, can we send them our research about how it improves ACT scores? And I said, yes, we can do that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but I think that's where we are right now, is kind of the standardization of education nationwide doesn't support communication. That's kind of scary.
Even when they say they do, last March, we were at Milwaukee and we had the State Department of Education person come in and give a part of the keynote, and she talked about literacy without really talking about speaking and listening. And she said, well, I'm going to let Dr. Hill talk about that. Like it was not as important for the State Department of Education leader to talk about it, but another speaker to talk about it.
And that's interesting because if you look up the use of the word literacy, more and more it does include. But on that level, so often people talk about literacy and they mean reading and writing.
Right. Yeah.
Their definition in Wisconsin includes speaking
I
and
know,
listening.
that's
But
exactly.
she wasn't addressing that. Nothing in what they had done addressed that at that
When
point.
we wrote the standards for California for testing, we put in specifically speaking and listening. It's there, but no test.
Research has shown that public school teachers, other than ourselves, of course, have the same level of speech apprehension as the general public. So if they're afraid themselves to get up and fight for something or to explain it, no wonder they don't back it.
There's also research for elementary teachers
Right.
that show
yeah.
they're one of the highest speech
Yes.
apprehension groups
Yeah.
of
Just
all.
Yeah.
open house, they're willing to talk to the kids, but you put the parents in the room and they're
Yes,
petrified.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if we can't get to them, and they don't want to hear us because they're afraid.
I was frustrated this summer. I was watching PBS, and there was a program about some strategies now being used in New York to teach elementary students to cope with these very things you're talking about, and also to develop an ability to express and respond to feelings and opinions. Made me so angry because it was based on, and you remember this, Mary, that research of Allen's back in the 60s that identified what Pam has put out there, the 5 competencies. And that was based on that. That whole program is based on that, and yet there was no mention of that research or where it came from. And I thought, it's in our curriculum, it's in our state, but it was as if it were something new, and it was doing all these wonderful things for kids. And I think that is one of our problems that we need to look at, is there's nothing wrong with claiming our turf. There's nothing wrong with K-12 educators taking a leadership role in their own communities. And I constantly talk about this in our state because the curriculum is there, the requirement is there, the competencies are there, and yet they're being stripped away from us on the local level because our speech teachers aren't standing up on the local level and saying, no, wait a minute, and then offering perhaps to do in-service kinds of things or continuing ed kinds of things in your own community. And I think as educators and as speech educators, and that's who I think I am, my heart's still here, is that we need to step forward. And we need to take that leadership role. If your English teachers don't know how to teach that, then team teach or offer to do that. And I've been really strong in that advocacy to try to get us, we're the best at it, it's what we do it well, and we can, I think, become the leaders in our own districts. And unless we do that, we can have all the national leadership we want in our state, we can have all the state leadership we want, But if we don't carry it out on the local level, and if our own speech teachers don't assume that responsibility and that mantle, I think we're losing it. And sometimes we're our own worst enemy.
Well, this builds on something that we had talked about before about trying to do continuing education for teachers at the conventions, and then a discussion I had with Brad Mello yesterday about those kind of in-servicing things. You've all sat through those required in-service days, and they are, kill me now. But if we made a database of people through, whether it's through the national office, we are willing to go in and in-service your teachers for a day. You know, these are the people in these regions who can get to you, and get that word out through national. Because my feeling is, what now? We have these wonderful standards. NCA adopted them. What now? We have the ability to go out and talk to these school districts and in-service these teachers. Well, what now? And our just talking about it is great and it's energizing, but we need to know where we're going and what steps we need to do to get there.
One of the problems that I see right now is the dwindling number of teachers certified in the teaching communication area. And it's getting worse, I think, in every state. Right now, my program is probably the best one in the state of Oklahoma. The other bigger programs where they have more students and all of that, they have kind of quit. At University of Central Oklahoma, they passed it off to the theater department, and they don't get speech training, they get theater kind of training. Northeastern, they're just dwindling it down. And so mine is one of the most viable programs now, but I still don't get all of the numbers because people don't want to come to a rural school because Ada, Oklahoma is not a city area. And so they don't want to come down there. So I don't get a lot of people in the program so I can graduate them and get them out and get them into the schools. And so we end up with this person like we've got in one of our local schools who was certified alternately. She was certified as an English teacher to start with, and she had competed in high school in forensics. And she was able to pass the certification exam. I don't know how, but she did. I had some students out there doing some observations, but she was wanting to pick their brains. She didn't want them observing her and learning from her. She wanted to learn from them. And I'm thinking that's the problem. We need to have the people out there who are really qualified and capable of doing the teaching.
Do you have speech-only certification? Or is it...
Well, ours is speech/drama/debate. It's a triple kind of certification.
We have speech certification.
You do?
Nebraska does.
You do in Nebraska too?
But it needs to be linked with something else. It's,
See, ours is not linked.
No, ours is dual, communication, arts, and literature with Minnesota.
That's what we have in
Ours
Illinois.
is speech.
I think the Minnesota model,
Speech, and it's called speech.
Pennsylvania is what?
Pennsylvania is called communication, but that covers English.
It does.
So if you graduate with an English degree, you are certified in communication.
Okay, that's how we are.
Yeah.
But given the reality of all of that, we still have teachers out there who have to teach oral communication in an English class, in a science class, who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So we need to be ready to help them.
You know, Colorado is language arts.
Right, Michigan is
Yeah.
also.
So California is language arts.
You know, something that I think we're saying, I have grown tremendously in elementary, secondary through this association and this particular association. I think we're overlooking maybe the link, or maybe I just need to say it. I think our state associations have to pick up the ball. We have to have people in our state associations who are affiliated here and have access to these ideas and these materials. And then our state association is a strong lobbying force in our state. We lobby the legislature, we lobby the state board. There's a critical vote at the state board next week. We've been working on a position for that. We work constantly with our state, Texas Education Agency there. But I think we have to speak out, not only as speech teachers, but as educators, and get our state associations mobilized, because they listen to us. and you learn a lot about. Melissa and I talked about this, and I remember one time I came to Central and did that program about get out there and get political, but teachers are so reluctant to do that.
Yeah. Well, they have no time either.
Well, that's true, and it takes a tremendous amount of time. It really does. But I think there's where you reach the grassroots teacher. Now, on the university level, one thing I did, I just kind of made our little university a network to provide services for K-12 teachers, whether they were doing UIL things or whatever they were doing. I had students trained that could go work with them, and I think we've got to get the word out there of what we do. I don't know if you're familiar or not, and I haven't seen Jana Riggins here. I don't know if Jana's here, but we have done, and it's on the web, it's on the University of Scholastic League website. We worked on a correlation between learning outcomes in English language arts and social studies and learning outcomes from participation in oral and interpretive debate and public speaking. And it's phenomenal. When I told Jana, yes, I'd do it, I had no idea what I was getting into. Research was phenomenal. But it's tremendous, and it's tremendous to have in your hands and go show an educator. Now, yes, it's correlated with the Texas curriculum, but we have those 6 strengths. And it's amazing in our social studies curriculum how many speaking, listening standards there are in social studies now. But that document, if you need something, get on that website, print it out. It's long, but the documentation is there. And UIL has also done a number of studies on correlation of participation in speech contests and success in college. And they got a grant to do this, and that information is there. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. I may be telling you things you already know. But I really recommend that. And just pick up the phone and call UIL and talk to Jana, because that organization is doing a tremendous job in terms of providing the academic research and whatever that validates our programs.
What's UIL?
It's the University Interscholastic League. It's the Texas University Interscholastic League. And that study is tremendous, and it's still ongoing, and they're doing it in a lot of Title I schools and collecting data on that. And our teachers have it in their hands, and they can go into their administrators and say, okay, well, here it is.
I think that's an excellent thing to what we were talking about communicating with each other.
Yeah.
Get that link sent to all of us. Get those kinds of things available, because I didn't know about the research.
Well, you don't know. I mean, you don't know those things. If I have your email addresses, I can send you that link, that email. I can also give you Jana's personal number. And I am so proud of what she's doing in that state to legitimize, if you will, what we do and what we teach. And if the evidence is, the data is just overwhelming. I think that's good. Also, I have a question. This national curriculum, I understand, is based on, I'm talking Texas here, I didn't bring a flag, but I understand it's based on the Texas model. Speech is a requirement in Texas, and I don't know. Now, Texas, I understand 4 states have not signed on to that national curriculum. The word national curriculum sends up all kinds of signals to me, but it might be something we want to look at if indeed speech is included in that national curriculum. And if indeed all of these competencies that we're talking about is included in the national curriculum, I don't know what's happening. That Texas didn't sign on to it, but you know we're a nation, not a state anymore. But I just think some things are out there. If we just latch onto it and we get involved, I think there is a great deal of emphasis and a great deal of interest in what we do in K-12 schools. And we just, I think, need to latch onto it and be more assertive and get out there and beat the drum.
I have to,
Go ahead. You go.
I want to tell you the power of a state organization. In Minnesota, they had talked about dropping listening standards from the pre-service teacher board of teaching requirements. And single-handedly, there were 4 or 5 of us who were NCA member, Warren Sandman, Dan Brown-Mills, Judy Litthurst, who went into the State Department and says, you are not dropping the listening competencies that we need to have our teachers demonstrate.
Absolutely.
And they saved them. So, I mean, there is power in that organization, and that's important to know. On the other hand, we still cannot get any questions about communication into our praxis. What sense does that make? You take the test, so you teach English, but you have to teach speech, but there's no questions in that test. It's frustrating.
And there should be.
And there should be,
I don't
absolutely.
know
there
the
should be.
process that your state uses on that, you might look into that and
Oh,
see
we've
how you
looked.
get appointed to that committee.
We've looked and they don't listen.
I just wanted to follow up on the national curriculum and the future of standards because I've been involved with a new standard effort, which I think might be the basis for the national curriculum when we mentioned that, but I may be wrong. So just pass that around if you want to. It's new national standards being put out by the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State Officers. And I'm giving you the information about who those groups are there when you get the front page. And my role was as a reviewer. I did not help write the standards. I was a reviewer of them. And on the very back page, if you look at the third page, yeah, that's the one. This is in July 2009 what the reviewers were sent for speaking and listening. Now, no surprise to anybody, there were 15 writing standards, and there were 17 reading standards, and there were 4 speaking and listening standards. So, and you can, I mean, it's just such a minimalistic thing, I couldn't believe it. Well, anyway, as a reviewer, I explained to them that, this is probably insufficient, and gave them some suggestions. I think I wrote 20 because I wanted it to be more than reading and writing. Anyway, on page 2, is the latest version, and I'm not quite clear whether it's a final version or it's still possible to review it. They've got a committee called a validation committee that is looking at them now, so whatever that means. But anyway, we're now up to 8. We doubled the number of speaking and listening standards, and they did some good things. Some of these are exactly what I wrote, and others they fiddled with, and some they made better, I think, and of course a lot of them they left out, as you can see. And some of these weren't fine. But they had language like, what was the word that they used? I'm going to forget the word now. They used vocabulary that was totally not ours. I mean, just words that we would never use. And I really kind of wrote them a strong note saying that communication people never use these words anymore. They're just, it wasn't elocution, but almost that.
Elocution's a bad word.
They did take them out, which that was, because it just made it so non-professional from my perspective. I thought we made great progress on that at least. So keep an eye out for these. I think that, as I say, I don't know if these are final or in the revised version, but I think this might be another player that will come out because it did mention how many states had signed on. So I think this is...
I think there are only 4.
That
They're not. We're one of them, and I don't know why, except we're Americans.
Yeah.
I didn't figure we were.
I wouldn't either. They're too independent.
That's right.
No, but a member of a chief, or 1 or 2 of them, was on the writing committee for this.
Because I know Illinois is backing a chief.
Yes, they had a representative, and so did the College Board. The College Board was on that group. Lots of business people on the committee now that roped them. Business folks, but a lot of English professors, that kind of thing. No, big surprise, no communication people.
And that is something else, Mary, and I don't want to get off this because gosh, I appreciate this, thank you. But our biggest supporters in our state are getting requirements, getting certification. We have 8 courses in the core foundation curriculum that are all courses we recognize and not. I think that the business community, there's a Texas Business and Education Coalition, and those business people are the ones who have supported us all the way. And we listen to them and incorporate things from them. So I think our friends are out there, but I think we're going to have to reach out and get them on our side.
Well, and the problem is the English teachers, and then you get these kinds of exams, or they do a book report, or, it's just that old story. NCTE has not been our friend.
But the college does the same thing. My dissertation was comparing and contrasting how people met the listening standards for pre-service teachers in Minnesota.
Exactly.
Students listen to speeches, therefore they can listen. And this was, the University of Minnesota, who was not even going to talk about how that could be improved. I think St. Cloud and us, Mankato, were the only two who actually had a course in listening, or at least talked about the standards. So it's frustrating at best. Yeah. So you're right.
And students do recognize what they don't have. That the scholar, this gentleman did research in North Dakota, and the students had to give a speech. They learned how to write the speech, but they learned nothing about delivery, audience adaptation, and they reported that. And of course, I asked this gentleman, well, what are you going to do with this? This is important. Do you pay any attention to elementary and secondary here at NCA? I mean, it's nothing new. It's just the same old thing. But here he's done a study. He has these ideas. He's teaching at Penn State Bear in an area. Well, I could consult. I mean, there needs to be, as has been articulated, some direct force moving forward to get some of this out there. And of course, in this little school district of North Dakota, they did make changes because they actually listened to their students. But the students know what's wrong.
So we have about 10 minutes before the magical hour is up. Where will we be in 5 years?
One thing we're doing at IFCU is kind of the same thing. We are trying to get into school board meetings. So we found like the National School Board, or not national, but Illinois School Board. And we're hoping, we submitted a presentation, so we're hoping that at least in Illinois we can start to make a little bit of a difference. I don't know if we will. We're trying.
That's an important group, though.
That is.
But education moves so slowly. I'm going to say 5 years is not enough.
Right.
It's probably going to take us 10 or 20 years to actually evolve something and get it that important.
Well, the thing is, I think that we can accomplish all this, and certainly everybody in here has contributed tremendously in different areas. But when the rubber hits the road and you're in that classroom, as I am in high school classrooms frequently, it's not really being taught. And so there's that gap between what we have and what we do. And I don't know how to approach that. I think we must have PR for school administrators and whatever, and I hope we do that because I think the world is ready for us, and I hope we can move ahead.
In 5 years, though, if you look at the number and the degree of membership here, I think we're missing a boat, and that is, in 5 years, you're going to have the R word appear in greater and greater numbers, the R word being retirement. But therein, you have a pool of people regionally who can serve as consultants. Yeah, I know, it's not an everyday thing. But if we were, as a section or as an entity, were to develop that pool, the national office tried to do this a number of years ago, but they didn't tap the right people because the people that are here are either close to or have retired or wish they could. But the idea is they're going to be in different parts of the country. And all of a sudden, you've got people that we just have to make ourselves known or make them known to the colleges and universities, to the accrediting agencies, or to whatever method we choose.
We've got to get NCA focused as well. I mean,
Yeah.
NCA's
Yes.
got to be behind this as an organization.
Yeah.
Fred Mello did say he was interested in this, so I mean, he at least has expressed an interest from the national office.
I think we've come up with actually our next challenge as we've talked, and some young, wonderful scholar who would love to. I mean, I think there's a book that needs to be edited, High School Speech Matters, and it's that piece, and it's just an editing piece of taking off, because we all have, this is a great little bit, and this is a great little bit, but it is publishing that key text that everyone can look at and said, here's the research that says when you teach interpretation, this is what happens. The research, this is what when you do this, your ACT scores are going to go to there. And it needs, and NCA and we all do, we like to have that one key source, that comes around every 5 to 10 years, and it's time to have that. So I'm not going to mention any names, Lindsay, but I wouldn't do that.
And Christine.
And Christine.
There you go.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you something that I am very concerned about 5 years out, and that's what's happening to publishing and textbook publishing. Because many of you know that the small niche companies have sold to the big companies who are not really interested in this small market.
Right.
And I'm hitting that head on. A number of you have books, I have books. But the thing about it is that I have a real fear. My husband was in publishing for a number of years, and the big companies, and most of them now are foreign owned. And I have a real fear about what may happen to us 5 years out in that area, because I think we still need good textbooks.
See, I think the only answer to that method, because we haven't had a methods book now for, 15 years or something, since Clay Wilmington, I think, last one, but anyway, is to get chapters in the English methods books. I mean, that's the answer. And I always thought if we could have an edited methods book where you have experts in reading, experts in writing, experts in speaking, listening, pedagogy, and put those into one book, then you would have a methods book that the authors actually knew what they were talking about. Because if you look at chapters that are like the language arts books, if you look at those chapters on speaking and listening, pathetic. They're just sad. They really are horrible. They don't cite our research. They're not written by experts. It's just
So how do we do that?
Well, I don't know how to do it.
We are going to have to be assertive. But I'm talking also about the high school textbooks.
Yeah.
Because that
Sure,
market
sure.
may dry up unless some other publishers get interested in that small market. And I'm very concerned about it.
The other thing, the statistics are really startling in the number of teachers who start and then drop
Yes.
out.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
The attrition rate is incredible. In Iowa, we have the Iowa Alliance for Arts and Education, and they have a mentoring program. They got a grant from the state, and so ICA, the Iowa Communication Association, is a part of that. The problem is that we have so few teachers that I haven't been able to place anybody out there. The only ones are teachers, young teachers who've come to me and said, I really need some help. I'm ready to quit teaching. And they're among the brightest. I think about some of them, I wish they would try out. But these are people who are really concerned, and where do they go? And I find that the national statistics are appalling. We lose them before 5 years.
Yes. It's the same thing with the extracurricular, the
Exactly.
speech and debate
yeah.
coaches. It's very difficult to keep those people and to keep programs going. The programs are so personality driven
Yes.
that when you lose the person, you
Yeah.
generally lose the program.
Yeah.
And I would hazard a guess, and I would like someone, not me of course, but somebody to do just a survey and find out how many people in our profession started in those extracurricular activities, including theater and those sorts of things. I will bet money that it is extremely high. And the problem is, if those activities go away, the feeders for this whole association, it's the underpinnings of the where we get our members from. And I don't think that many people realize that, except for groups like this. I don't think that that's being realized by our executive group. A few members, yes, but not in general. People aren't realizing that, if their little niche of teaching this specific theoretical background of communication is going to disappear when you don't have the feeder people coming in. And that's a key thing. I think 5 years down the road, I'm afraid of what's going to happen to the whole, it may not be 5, maybe 10 years down the road, the association when we run out of these people. Because this is not an activity that people say, oh, I want to be a communication major, and just show up at the doorstep. There is some specific instance that got them there, a teacher, an activity, or something. And we're running out of that.
Well, just look at this group.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us are approaching middle age.
From one direction or the other.
There you go.
From one direction or the other.
In 5 years out, how many in this room are still going to be actively teaching in the classroom? That's scary.
Yeah, that's the question. Where do our successors come from?
Yeah.
I think people of our era, you're absolutely right. I mean, everybody I know came out of a high school or college forensic program of some kind or something. But I'm not sure that's true anymore. I would be interested in the
I would be interested. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's changing, but we have to find out where those people are coming from.
Yeah.
I still would contend it may not be the extracurricular, but there's got to be a teacher, a communication teacher, or somebody somewhere along the line that got them interested in this. This is not just something you fall into. There has to be some significant instance somewhere in the line, whether it is forensics, debate, whatever.
Well, I just had a little visit with one of the future presidents coming in, and this person was saying that the organization, from this person's perspective, was taking a real serious turn toward critical cultural, being the identity of the organization. And this person was concerned about that. But, I don't think those people were in forensics in my school.
No.
I think the whole nature of the organization, probably more than I'm aware of, because I'm not in the loop at the moment, but I think maybe 5 years K-12 will not be part of NCA.
I think one thing that we could use to our benefit is that Richard West, he was a ComEd.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And be in leadership.
He's a very big supporter of K-12.
Yes.
Right, I know, but since he'll be in a position of leadership, I don't know how that could benefit us.
Yes.
So we certainly will use and abuse people like that.
No, I think that is the key, and when you read those statements of the folks running for these offices, that's an important thing to look for. They don't even mention us.
And the other thing is, it's amazing. We think we're a small number, but look at the actual numbers of the people who vote in those elections. They're very small when you consider our whole organization. It could mean that a group of this size could influence an election like that for a variety of reasons, because not everybody votes. Very, very small percentage of people vote.
We need
We
to
do.
give out our vote.
We
Yes.
traditionally
Right.
do.
Yeah. Which makes a big difference.
The Western states, one of their agenda items for this convention was to drop the K-12 section. It's the only regional organization that still has that. It didn't pass, but I think that's a frightening kind of thing.
It is.
And that they were also trying to limit the tenure of specifically K-12 people who serve in their legislative assembly and their administrative committees. So it didn't pass because they got information about it, but it is frightening that kind of thing happens. We dropped it in Central States because we just didn't have the numbers. And so we became absorbed into the communication education, and I felt like ComEd met my needs at Central, but in Western, I'm a member of Western too, and I've never felt like the other groups met my needs as well as the K-12.
Well,
Last bits of brilliance. I think we're beyond the hour. It's still flashing back there, but we'll see.
Well, I'm a member of the National Writing Project, the Western Pennsylvania Writing Project. And, the writing teachers, I don't know how they started this. I guess it was through NCTE, I'm not sure. But that's a powerful force that says writing is essential. Writing must be through the curriculum. I don't know, how do we develop some kind of voice like that where people spend a month in the summer in an institute learning how to teach speech.
Summer camp for speech teachers.
Yes. Speaking across the curriculum.
I found I'm in an independent school, so we're not associated with the public schools, but there is an association of independent schools, and there's a national school association. And we do a conference every 2 years for the Michigan group. And I presented at a number of those on speaking, listening, that sort of thing. And the sessions are always packed full. And you get teachers from all kinds of disciplines to do that. And if we can start maybe hitting the smaller conferences, making sure that other disciplines know what we do in order to take advantage of that.
I was thinking along the same lines that, you know, I know NCTE and NCA traditionally meet at the same time.
Right.
Now that may not be true this year because we're earlier than usual, but I don't remember when NCTE meets anymore. But maybe we need to infiltrate some of those other organizations. The Colorado Language Arts Society still has a big conference annually. Now, I haven't been a part of it for probably 10 years, but, you know, maybe I need to worm my way back in there. Because you're right. When English teachers are told that you have to do speech, they're doing kind of thing. And so we could provide some services and some research-based information to them to start building back up.
I think in addition to providing in the context of what we do the normal school, there are models of new schools that are out there. There's Association for Charter Schools.
Mm-hmm.
There's Association
Yes.
for Independent Schools. We frankly don't touch. And I think, again, if we simply said, and charter school people are willing to talk to us, and it's a different format, but they will freely admit they don't know anything about oral communication or speaking and listening. And I think that's going to be a key factor. And secondly, I suggest that we need to develop, somebody a number of years ago talked about a listserv. And we just need, and maybe that's the answer, maybe not, but we need to develop some kind of common ground. Okay, what's happening? Virginia's UIL. She'll give us the address, and we can talk to Janet and get the info that we need. But what else is going on out there? We need a point of contact, because there are folks out there who need our help.
Well, that goes back to what you were talking about, putting together some way of communicating with each other so that we have material to communicate out.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about technology.
No.
Oh, by the way.
I was going to mention, and this is my particular thing, and I plead guilty, but if we had a short course on technology, just to show people how you do these things, how do you put together a listserv, what can you do, I think we might be surprised who will show up.
Well, do we have, it sounds like we're in agreement when we need a person who would be the first clearinghouse, the gatherer, so to speak, of this is the kind of information we have, the research from UIL.
I mean, one of the things that, I've works on a smaller scale. I don't really work on this type of scale, but very simply, you use Google Documents, Google Groups. I've got Google Groups for a couple different things. And you just set up the group. You can make anyone you want to an administrator. The administration of that group can pass along from any person to any person. You invite people to join, or people can join on their own. And you can post files, you can post documents, you can communicate through email. You can do a whole host of things, I think, that might serve. You can, put bulletin announcements up, and people will get emails about them. And it runs and it's very simple. You can set one up in 5 minutes.
Is that a volunteering statement? I'm hearing words.
Sounds
I
like
know how to do it.
Yes, I wouldn't mind doing that if I can also get someone else to help administer it as we go along. My last option as newsletter editor has has expired. we can see whether I can resurrect it with this. But seriously, it does not take much time at all to set something like that
And
up.
for each person
And
to
if-
post,
and-
it would be useful.
All I need is emails of everyone, and I can use John's list.
Right, yeah.
And then you can either add people to the group directly, or you can send out invitations for people to join. And what I'd start with is adding people directly, and that way everyone would be directly. And you can post or send posts to the administrator who will post it, or you can give all the people who are part of the group ability to post.
Yeah, that'd be easy.
That'd be
So
easy.
you know, I'll look out. I'll get to work on setting something like that up.
Yeah.
And then we
That's
can send
wonderful.
the invitation to the section members.
Right.
Right,
And
yeah.
maybe the president or some of the.
Right, we'll send some invitations out to
Yeah.
people. Once we get a few things up there, I think, then we can start inviting others. Like we can outreach to community college, basic
Yeah.
course, our executive committee,
Yeah, exactly.
those sorts of things.
And then eventually into associations for charter schools.
State
Yeah.
associations,
Yeah.
those sorts of
Yeah.
people, yeah.
Trying to get them that word that, hey, we're here, we have good information for you, let's.
Yeah.
We can try it and see. I don't know if it's the right one, but at least it's a try. It's an attempt.
It's a
and we can-
starting point, sure.
It's a starting point. So I'll see what I can do to get something set up and get invitations out to people. It'll notify you when you're added to a group, and it will do things like that. I've used it, especially my debate team uses it all the time, and it works out
Yeah,
fantastic
that's
for
great.
posting files
Yeah.
and things.
Okay.
That's great.
Well, our time is almost up. I want to thank you so much. We'll be together again in 5 years and see if the wisdom of today, I'm sure there'll be 100 years out or program.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Thank you,
I'll be
John.
glad. Thank you all.
Facilitating